Okay, so that part was dealing with the decrease in the taxable supply portion. So we're going to use the same example, but this time around we're dealing with an increase. So the information is pretty much the same information except for the part of the title just saying that it's an increase in taxable supply. So what are we saying? We're saying the actual asset in this instance, it used to be 40% taxable supplies, and it also used to be 60% exempt supplies. So now it's moving up to a value of 70% taxable supplies and reducing from 60% of exempt use to now using 80% as like exempt use, so far as the taxable side of exempt services on that end is concerned. And going to use pretty much the same information. So once again, if we're running down the requirements before we go into this must be a capital asset which has a cost of more than 40,000 rand excluding VAT, and it must also be applied where the change in the percentage use is more than 10%, which is a detail that we went into as well. And we will also use adjusted cost, the weighting of using the lower of adjusted cost or open market value. An adjusted cost in terms of the weighting of that comparison must also include VAT. I hope we're clear in that regard. So there we go. Let's go. So we initially had 40% of taxable supply, and we initially had 60% of exempt supplies. So now we're moving up to taxable supplies of 70%. So that means we've gone up by 70 minus 40. So we've basically increased by 30%, right, to being taxable supply. And we've basically reduced from 70%, we've reduced from 60% exempt supply to 30%. So that's irrelevant for our side because exempt supplies do not have to be VATable in any way. So we're going to say, then we're going to use the same calculation that we use over that side, which is going to be 30%, right, times the lower of adjusted cost or open market value. And just remember, adjusted cost includes VAT, right, times the tax fraction of 15/115. So in this instance, that means we're basically getting an input VAT percentage which used to be a bit less to now being slightly more increased. So if we want to increase the situation of an input VAT, what must we do? What do we process to basically increase input VAT in this? That means we're basically working out input VAT increase, you know. So in that instance, where we're taking down we're taking down what we're taking up VAT output, where there was an initial decrease of input VAT, we had to put through output VAT. Whereas in this situation, to get back from, like, you know, more of like an output VAT that is higher than input VAT, so we now basically have to increase that by having to put through input VAT. So this will help us get through to the input VAT that will be recognizable to us by the asset now suddenly using more of percentage increase in taxable supplies, and we use the tax fraction as well. So when we use figures that are like obviously appropriate for our calculation is 30% times lower of the two open market values, same calculation. We got to understand that the lower of the adjusted cost, which was 300,000, and the open market value, we dotted it down to say it was 400,000. So the lower of the two costs, we used the adjusted cost. In that we got adjusted cost, which happened to be 300,000 rands, right? And we then apply our tax fraction of 15 over 115, because everything must include VAT. And remember, it's assumed that market value also includes VAT. So it makes sense for us to have market value, which includes VAT, and adjusted cost, which also includes VAT, because you must compare eggs with eggs. You can't compare eggs with apples. It must be similar comparisons. So therefore, what do we have in terms of our answer? So we're gonna go on and say 15 divided by 115. I don't have the best calculator, so I have to do this, sorry. Okay, times 300k. It's the same calculation, basically. No, it's not the same. It's not the same, sorry, because the values, the percentages are different. Okay, times 3%. So in this regard, we've got input VAT of 11,000 rands, 11,739 that we can now recognize within. So this is input VAT that you can now recognize to claim back for the additional increase of the taxable use of that asset. So input VAT to recognize.